Okay, having a quorum, we'll open the ABR meeting of July 12th. And we will start the meeting with public comment. Any member of the public may address the ABR for up to 2 minutes on a subject that is not scheduled for on this agenda. Seeing no one, I will close that portion of the meeting and go to approval of the minutes of the previous ABR meeting, which was June 28th. Do we have any comments prior to item 1? Item 1. Item 2. Item 3. Item 4. No comments? I didn't see anything wrong with them myself, so... we need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
By Gary, second by...
I'll second it.
By Paul. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Are you abstaining? Keith abstains. We will move on to the consent calendar. This was for... which was also June 28th. Can I have a maker of the motion to approve those minutes? Paul, second by Keith. All right, Michelle?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is for the consent agenda for Tuesday, July 6th, last week's consent agenda.
Oh, July 6th, okay.
So Tuesday, July 6th. Item A, 1298 Las Positas Road was continued 1 week with comments. Item B, 505 Wentworth Avenue, received final approval of architecture and landscaping was continued 1 week. Item C, 2065 Mission Ridge Road, received final approval as submitted. Item D, 3940 State Street, continued 1 week with comments. Item E, citywide Next G application, received positive comments to the Community Development Director. Items on consent were reviewed by Clay Rowell.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. So consent calendar for July 12th. Can I have a maker of the motion?
So moved.
Keith, seconded by Gary.
Yes, Madam Chair. Consent agenda for today, Monday, July 12th. Item A, 1298 Las Positas Road was postponed indefinitely at the applicant's request. Item B, 3940 State Street was continued 1 week with comments. Item C, 505 Wentworth Avenue received final approval as submitted of landscaping. Item D, 900 Calle de los Amigos continued 1 week. Items on consent, items B was reviewed by Clay Arell and C and D by Chris Gilliland.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a couple announcements. We received a formal resignation from our member Carol Gross, so she's no longer a part of the ABR. We also, Council recently reappointed Chris Gilliland back to the ABR, so he will be our landscape architect on the board. And then for today, we have Chris Gilliland and Clay Arell will be late today, approximately 4 o'clock.
All right. No other announcements? Thanks, Michelle. We'll miss Carol greatly. So, good luck, Carol, if you're listening or watching. Okay, we're on to discussion item number 1, which is review of the draft minor revisions to the ABR guidelines.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Architectural Board of Review. My name is Heather Baker. I'm a project planner with the Design Review and Historic Preservation section. Staff has been working to update the Historic Landmarks Commission's rules and procedures, which right now is only like an 11-page document. And the ABR guidelines were updated, as you might know, probably about 6 years ago. And so they were the first set of complete guidelines with 3 parts, covering meeting procedures, architectural review standards, and landscaping guidelines as well. So what happened is that then we also, of course, created the Single Family Design Board, and their guidelines are patterned after yours, and then the Historic Landmarks Commission rules and procedures will be transformed to be similar to these as well. So in that process of the updates, we just did a 2-year review of the SFDB guidelines, and then with the work on the HLC rules and procedures, we found some areas that needed updating in general, and so as a result, we're coming to you with these revisions as we're revising all 3 documents at once. So just to give you the context as to why we're doing this right now. So what I'd like to do is just go through the major changes to the documents, and actually they're not major changes, they are minor, they're very minor, but it's good for you to be aware of how the document is changing. We will be doing a reprint of them fairly soon. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So in the introduction, and if you have questions or comments, my suggestion, Madam Chair, would just be that we go ahead and take them as we move along, since just to keep the item short, if you would like. Okay, so then for this one, a lot of this is just simple wording changes. We did acknowledge here there's some changes pending in the 2010 general plan update, and the relationship between that and these guidelines is going to be slightly different. For the supplemental list of design guidelines.
Heather, I just
Yeah.
noticed that that one section with fixed references to the SFDB, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be ABR.
Oh, right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the problem with having all these going back and forth. We're doing copying and pasting. Thanks. Okay, supplemental city design guidelines. These, we've alphabetized them. Nothing too exciting there. And we're also going to add the Highway 101 design guidelines to this, because there are some projects apparently that are subject to those. Okay, so then next, let's move to part 1. And these will all be changed into just chapters instead of separate documents in the future. It'll all have like a sequential page numbering all the way through and just one table of contents. We decided that was a better way to format it. This is just simply wording changes to make it match the other guidelines. It's been there all along in your guideline document, just slight changes. Okay, the next one.
Sorry, Heather, what was the slight change that you made on that one?
Rather than get too focused on the details, I guess what staff's request is if you could just read it, and if you have any objections, then...
I actually did have a comment on
Okay,
that,
on this
that
particular one?
one,
Okay,
and it was,
sure.
it says that the existing sandstone walls, stairways, and wrought iron gates should be preserved. It doesn't give applicants an option to remove those if they get clearance by the city historian. And there have been instances where we as a board have questioned them, and we always encourage people to keep them, but it doesn't give an option. It's black and white that it says they should be preserved. And there are some instances where existing sandstone walls they're highly deteriorated, they're not worth keeping, they're in the wrong spot. Future development could be better without the use of them, and we could reuse the stone somewhere else. So this statement doesn't give that option anywhere.
Yeah, that particular part of the wording hasn't changed. That was there before. Mr. Lamone is in the audience. Do you want to respond to the request for more flexibility with the sandstone walls preservation for ABR projects?
Hi, I'm Limon, Senior Planner. I think I heard the last part of that in your concerns about adding flexibility into that statement. Part of a guideline is it is a guideline. The board can also choose to create more flexibility in there.
Okay.
And we can look at that specifically. But the real question is it historic, really? And if
Okay.
it's historic, there's a tendency to keep that authentic historic appearance on these properties, and that's the Commission's desire. That this board has also requested that in some cases. But I agree, in some cases, the structural deficiency of the wall requires you to demo it.
Right.
And we've seen you all require it to be refaced. And so it could happen either way. The key is, if you want us to look at that, we could add some language to increase
Well,
flexibility.
I only brought that up because it just seems that it's the purpose of this revised document to make it really clear to applicants what they're.
Well, I don't know if Heather mentioned this, but we have a long discussion with our city attorney about using the word should or shall in a guideline. And she's actually gone through the document several times to look at it as to whether we should change the shoulds to shalls or the shalls to shoulds.
And they're not being changed.
Well, I think we keep them at shoulds at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the part
Depends.
what we've been discussing is the administrative approval standards, which it's not really a shall. It's
That we've
it's
had this discussion on guidelines.
Yeah, right.
And we tend to soften it with should. It gives you
Right.
more
Okay, I get
flexibility.
it.
So if you see shoulds, it says you can
And
make
it's
an
right there.
exception
Okay, thanks.
where possible.
Thanks. Sorry, Heather.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. So the next one was cost consideration, and Chris Manson-Hing actually sent us a comment on this one. One of your board members, he was stating that he's concerned about this last sentence, that the expected cost of certain preferred design elements is evaluated to maintain the affordability of multifamily residential units. So again, the context of this, though, is only for those that are affordable housing projects that qualify as affordable underneath the city's rules and procedures. So it's not going to be, I mean, it's going to be a small percentage of your multifamily projects that come through. If we need to clarify that further, maybe I can change the title, affordable housing project cost consideration, get that wording in of affordable housing here in the last sentence so that it's very clear. Did you also receive his communication? So
I did, but I was wondering under the same guys, would that be inclusive if there are an affordable unit on there as a condition when there's only one or two affordable units and then there's
shaking his head no, because probably the affordable housing programs that the city runs would require more than one.
Yeah,
unit.
just to give you the board a little bit of background on this policy, this was actually about 15 years ago that we came before the boards and asked the boards to consider that policy with respect to an all affordable, 100% affordable project. It was a low-cost affordable senior housing, I think, or something like that effect. And really the issue came up of this idea of what a S-tile or an authentic mission tile roof would be due to the project design and whether we could allow a different type of roofing system and that type of consideration. So if you want us to, again, retitle it to limit that use, we can. We're not intending to have one unit be the trigger for it to all come into question. It's the idea that it was an affordable project, completely designed as such.
And perhaps if you could add something that says projects that have 100% affordability instead of one that's 25% or one that's just 5%.
Sure.
I think that would be a better direction.
And just really quick, Heather, I noticed you have shall on that item instead of should.
Yes, this language actually comes from the HLC rules and procedures, and so it's my understanding that this particular topic was very important to a previous community development director who directed that it be written in this way. So
It comes from HLCs?
yeah, rules and procedures. So
But that doesn't have anything to do with us.
we're trying to be consistent where topics run through all different boards. So the fact that it's affordable for HLC versus ABR, it should be treated the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have to say, that just for the record, that I have a problem with that too. I think that if you're a low-cost housing project and you want to do a Spanish style, that the price you have to pay is to do a two-piece style. If all the other applicants that are submitting have to do that. Otherwise, you can pick a different style that doesn't require you to use a less, expensive. You know what I mean? Like you can use comp shingles in place of it. If I don't know, I don't entirely agree with that.
Just comment a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Jaime.
I think if you look at that shall, it's directing you to consider the total cost of the design, not directing you to approve it. So it shall consider the entire cost of the project. Let's just say the project is, $500,000 or $1 million. That's the cost. Include the total cost, not just say it's the architectural building, it's the site development, it's the idea of what makes it affordable, the total cost of the project. And so if you look at it that way, I don't think it's directing you to say you shall approve it. It's just look at the entire process. It's a little bit more stronger language for us to have you evaluate that cost.
Okay.
Okay, so next item is the administrative approval standards. A lot of just fine wording changes here. One of the significant things that we made sure to clarify is that projects which are subject to noticing would not be eligible for administrative staff level of approval. Since we've generally been trying to broaden the breadth of the types of projects that staff can review for efficiency and cost savings, we just wanted to make it clear that whenever noticing is required, we still wouldn't be reviewing that. So one of the new items that we added, and again here in the beginning, it's just small changes, for minor tree removals and landscape alterations. That is new. So let's see if we can scroll down there. So it's fairly strict. Basically, also for landscape alterations, that's been added as long as no native landscaping is being removed, and the tree removal criteria, if that's part of it, is being complied with, and then that, and it's consistent with design guidelines. Staff could do minor landscape alterations, and then with the tree removals, no more than 3 trees, less than 12 inches in diameter. Again, it's consistent with guidelines. That would be eligible for staff approval.
Yeah, can we back up to, you have 10.3 administrative review. They're supposed to have project-specific standards. C, chimneys and metal flues.
Oh, right, yeah, this is new, this horizontal siding material.
Yeah, it says horizontal siding material is not used on chimneys. So that would mean that shingles would be all right and vertical siding is okay? Is that really what you want?
Well,
or do you want wood?
I mean, yeah, so it's here, it says chimneys are either masonry or consistent with the style of the existing structure. So, I mean, if something isn't looking quite right, then we're going to refer it to consent calendar.
I wrote in my notes to take number 2 out altogether. It just was confusing. But
I think it's all right, but I think that it shouldn't be product specific.
So how would you suggest it?
I would say a wood siding, or not even necessarily wood, because it could be a composite material like a hardy board. So I would think that traditional materials, it should be used. A traditional material should be used. Metal pipe, stucco, stone, brick.
Okay, we'll work on that.
you could also just add to number 1. You could add that phrase to number 1 and say, and the use of traditional materials shall be, not shall, should be implemented, or something like that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, for the administrative standards, we are doing more of the shall because we want it to be clear what staff can and can't do. So, okay, good. So, let's see what else we have here. We did minor tree removals. Publicly visible. This definition is one that was just developed for the Single Family Design Board guidelines. It's not going to be used too much, I don't think, by the ABR, but it is there just as reference in case it comes up as an issue for a project. Zoning modification comments, there's just clarification as to the ABR's role in commenting on projects with modifications prior to them going to the staff hearing officer. Basically, it's just to comment as to whether the modification poses aesthetic issues, such as inconsistency with area development patterns, or if it is inconsistent with guidelines. For modifications to yard, lot, and floor area, then we would also appreciate comment from the board as to whether or not it promotes an appearance of uniformity of improvements.
Heather, Paul has a
Back to the
comment.
middle paragraph where you talk about the proposed modification is or is not aesthetic. You have Single Family Design Board
Oh,
listed in
thank
there
you.
again.
Okay, thanks. Okay. All right, so next we have part 2, landscaping. So here we're creating a handout which we handed out to you, of landscape plan requirements. This used to be a page in the guidelines, so instead it would simply be at the counter. So we are referring people to this. On the back side of this, also, we have an update to this one, landscaping shown on site plans. It said exemptions before, but it's not really an exemption because actually it still would be on the site plan. It just would be an exemption from a formal landscape plan for those types of projects. And the other thing that we worked on is the licensing requirements. Before we had some comment that if it was under 5,000 square feet of landscaping, that it didn't require a landscape architect. But we double-checked the state business and professions codes, and it didn't have any reference to that square footage. So we've removed that to be consistent, working with the city attorney's office. So we'll be updating the agendas regarding that as well. Let me catch up here. Okay, so then we added a guideline here that plants should be natural plants rather than artificial plants. Synthetic turf is not to be in the parkways or publicly visible locations. And that was something that, again, was brought up during the SFDB updates. So if it's in less visible areas, then it's discouraged, but can be considered by the board. Okay, so let's move to part 3 now. We didn't do a lot with the landscaping section. For part 3, again, we're double checking for consistency with the licensing codes to make sure that this is up to date. And also we took a look at the application and filing, and it's 2.5 weeks prior to the scheduled meeting that we would need applications to be in order for them to be noticed and so forth. So just kind of updating that. Partly it's due to the fact that we have alternating Fridays out of the office that we need a little bit more calendar time to get these things done. The agendas have been updated a little bit that you have, so this just reflects that. The noticing procedures have been simplified just slightly. So moving on to the rules and procedures regarding if something is at a concept review level and you'd like to change that to preliminary review level. This was an item that was in the HLC rules and procedures that seemed to make it very clear, so we're simply just adding that in to all of the board documents. But basically, it's just stating how that process happens. And then for Planning Commission comments, this is something that's been in the ordinance for all of the boards. We just are making reference to it in the guidelines.
I have a question. What is the procedure for such an item of the ADR to refer projects up? Would it be a straw vote by the board? Would it be one member? Well, how would that work?
Majority vote. Okay. All right. Okay.
And at why or what reason or what point would the board would want to take something up to Planning Commission? Because there was a couple of projects that we reviewed that were kind of like out of our purview because you were asking us to look at traffic and fire and flood and all, or creek and we're like, oh, and this is not us, but because of the way the project was put together by the applicant, it didn't require a Planning Commission review, so we were asked to review all these items. And so why or what would be the issues? Why would we want to push something up?
Right. If referring to the actual code, it cites highly visible to the public as a potential trigger. So if you had a project like that that was highly visible to the public, then this code allows for that referral. Yeah. And it, yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, we also recently updated the way that time extensions are described in the ordinance, and so for consent calendar approvals, it's just second or third time extensions. There's no more beyond that for projects. They would start over again at that point, so we just clarified that. And okay, so for findings, we clarified the findings that the Architectural Board of Review uses. We also included the project compatibility analysis reference, because that's a new part of the ordinance, even though it's not an actual finding, but you're looking at this for all of your projects now before you make motions for approval. And then these have been in the ordinance all along, but we just simply are making reference to them now. The RO zone and the CO zone have special findings that are required. So just getting that all up to date. Again, time extensions, we're just simply reflecting what's in the code now regarding that. Okay, cursory plan review is something that's being developed administratively versus a preliminary plan check. Basically, due to staffing constraints, budget constraints, we're going to be doing quicker, smaller plan checks, less comprehensive up front, and it's more and more the applicant's responsibility to make sure that plans are consistent with our zoning ordinance requirements. So that's coming down the pike, and it's called cursory plan review. It's under development. It should be instituted fairly soon.
I wanted to also inform the board that in the future, it's not that we don't want to do the zoning plan checks, but we're finding that in order to do that type of review, we need to do a comprehensive file and a archive check to see exactly what's legal on the property. And we don't do that right now for design review cases. It just takes too much time. So we've had problems come in where a project comes in through for review after a final approval has been obtained by the board, and we catch these things. So now we're basically telling architects and applicants that we will only go so far. We're going to check these critical items to make sure you have basic zoning compliance, but all these other details that require more investigation, we're putting that responsibility on the architect. However, we are also offering a zoning plan check for a fee. We will do that extended review and do that extended plan check if an applicant wants us to do that. We will do the records check. So that's going to be a service that we're going to offer for a fee. It'll be a fixed fee to begin with, but we also have an hourly rate depending on exactly what you want us to investigate. But that'll give you architects some more assurance that there won't be anything that pops up during our record search during building plan check.
Thanks, Tommy.
Okay. The next item is abstentions on continued items. This language was simplified. And then we have a new item here, project decision reconsideration, which I handed out to you as a separate handout because this is new. This is based on the way the city council meeting procedures are run, that basically if something's to be reconsidered, that it needs to be done immediately during the same sessions or at a adjourned session. And so basically, if there's something that you want to reconsider, you need to let staff know right away is the request, because that's the way the procedures work. It needs to be reconsidered at the very next meeting at the latest. So
Before you move on, Heather, on item D, abstention on continued items, there's a lot of instances where we have a continued item that's been seen for like the fourth time. And if somebody just happens to miss the previous meeting, that's pretty much stating that they have to abstain on the next meeting. And what you're stating in there is that unless they review the plans or the minutes, but every single member at every meeting reviews the plans and reviews the previous minutes anyway. So it really doesn't make any sense to make that statement, because everybody that's looking at the plans, if they weren't there the week earlier, of course they're going to review the previous minutes, and of course they're going to review the plans. So what does that statement actually mean?
Mr. Lemon, do you want to? It's just been in all of the board documents since I've started, so I'm not sure where it stems from.
Because we don't follow it.
Well, let me explain the genesis behind that. It was primarily intended to prevent a board member from raising new issues.
Right, I totally get it.
It's unfair. Yeah. And what it's involved, it used to be that you needed to actually listen to the tape. In the old days, we used to have actually a tape of the meeting, and we would require the board member to listen to the tape. Well, obviously, over time, the technology has changed. Now we have video, and we also have minutes that would give you that information. But the idea is that at concept level, you do have more latitude. It actually says that shall not apply to concept review at the end there. So even though you're not there to participate on a previous hearing on it, at concept level, anything goes, essentially. You can, in fact, raise issues because you haven't granted an approval. If you're at a preliminary approval or in-progress review, that's the idea there. If you haven't participated and you had a record of minutes, we don't want you to add 3 or 4 items onto a project and somehow change the direction of the project design. So that's really the intent as the project progresses, that there's more commitment on your part to be aware of what was discussed already before you decide to participate.
It seems like I completely agree with you. It just seems like there would be a better way to word that than the vagueness of unless they review the minutes and review the plans, because anybody could say, oh, I'm going to still vote, and I did review the plans and I did review the minutes.
There actually was a longer section. We ended up trying to condense things because our city attorney reviews things. There was a provision there that an applicant had the ability to request a member to abstain because they didn't participate. And our city attorney felt that that was inappropriate, that the applicants shouldn't be able to dictate on the reviewer their ability or request that they not participate. You know, that seemed a little odd that an architect could say to a board member, I don't want you participating. It's the board member's involvement in the level of review that's we're trying to dictate. So if you want us to try to expand that a little bit, we can. If it's
Just
make it more
clarify
clear.
it, I think.
Yeah,
'Cause
I think we
get
condensed it too
but-
much, I think.
Okay.
Well, the good point that you did have in there was for concept review,
Right.
and that you can allow that, and it's only for review after preliminary that applies to.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So maybe some sort of statement that the type of comments that are allowed if you haven't participated before. Okay. All right. So just one more item, which is the visual aids. Prior to this version, we simply had a short section on story poles. The SFDB guidelines and then the HLC rules and procedures updated version that's coming up have a much more extensive list of tools that you can ask for. So we just included those here. So photo simulations are described, three-dimensional massing models, perspective drawings, rendered streetscape elevations, comparative building studies, size, bulk, and scale analysis tools that are detailed actually in the EPV guidelines, the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines. We know it's a little awkward to refer you there. However, there's a large appendix there that we didn't feel we needed to recreate here. And these are just for your more challenging projects. If you feel like you need more information, never hesitate to go ahead and ask for that, and this is a list of things here that you can choose from. So that concludes the list of changes.
Okay, thanks, Heather.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks.
Okay, moving on, right on time, to item number 2, which is 1820 De La Vina Street. This is for third concept review, comments only. Project still requires environmental assessment. Hi.
Before we start here, we had a computer glitch where our site plan misprinted.
Jay, can I get your name for the record?
Jay Blatter from Hockhauser Blatter Architecture and Planning. We wanted to be able to, and I spoke to Kelly earlier, we had like a layer turned off that left out our additional parking space, which was an important feature. So I wanted to be able to provide the board with that revised print, if I could.
All right. I'm going to really briefly read the motion that was passed at the last meetings to refresh the board's memory on what we commented on. Number 1 was reduce the, where'd you go? Oh, he's back on.
Sorry about that. My back.
Reduce
listening.
reduce the overall size, bulk, and scale of the building. Number 2, resolve the north elevation and the relationship of the openings for the parking to the building above. Number 3, recess the upper floor common area elements and related fenestration at the rear elevation. Number 4, provide planted joint pavers along the auto court. Number 5, resolve the relationship of the front elevation trellis with the rear conference area and provide further relief of the 2-story massing. Number 6, resolve the repetition of the bay window elements and roof lines on the south elevation. And number 7, incorporate existing landscaping along the southern property line. Okay.
All righty. All right, what I'd like to do, and I mentioned before, is I'd like to include in the sets that the ABR has this updated plan. Somehow the layer we printed didn't show the 20th space, which I know wasn't one of our important responses to the board. So I'd like to just, if I could, I have 2 copies, and I apologize for that. Here. And I think what I'd like to do is I've organized my comments to be in response directly to the suggestions and comments from our last session. I think what I'd like to do, as soon as I have the site plan out, is start with some of the site plan issues that were discussed at the last meeting. At the last meeting, one of the comments that was suggested was how to create more landscaping at this entry area where the sidewalk comes up. And on the previous plan, we had a low wall that came up to around this point here, probably around 6 or 8 feet from the property line. We've revised the design, reduced the width of the building so that now this entire wall is the existing wall that's there. And I could bring out photographs. There's an existing 30-inch wall that returns where the driveway is. So in essence, and we'll show on the landscape plan, we're going to take the whole width of the existing driveway up to this point and make it all landscaping. And that means we'll be able to preserve both the existing low planting here, and we're going to preserve the entire hedge, the entire length of that side of the building, because I think one of the comments was they felt that was an important, from the viewpoint coming up the sidewalk, was to save that landscaping. Also, by returning the terrace back a little, it lets the grading return itself here, so we don't have any need for any modifications. And I want to point that out, that as of now, this project does not need a single modification. Everything complies in terms of setbacks, parking, and other aspects of the underlying zoning. Another significant change we made in terms of the plan was a close look at the parking plan. At the last meeting, it was suggested we look in to see if there was a place we might be able to get a parallel parking space. It was also suggested, and this will become more obvious when we get to the elevations, that instead of having parking space bays of 3 spaces, if we could find a way to get double parking space, it would give us a lot more meat to those supporting elements and would help the elevations above not feel like they're sitting just on posts. I'm happy to say that we've modified our plan now to include 2 additional spaces. We have 1 parallel parking space that will be for staff parking. We also have an additional parking space that we're not going to use for parking. We decided to use that for maneuvering. So this will be, if someone should come into the site and drive to the end, they could pull in that space and come out and do a single maneuver. I think it was Carol who was concerned with that. And also now we meet the zoning requirement of the 20 parking spaces. So we actually have, theoretically we could have 21. We felt it's better to use that for more for maneuvering as opposed to just get the 21st space. In addition, and Julie McGeever, our project manager, will present to you, we did do a study with regard to valet parking, and we'll present that to the board as well. I'd like to point out that we fully dimensioned this parking plan, and Stacy from Transportation has signed off on it. So she's approved it. We have that in the record. So we've redesigned it, and we've gotten Transportation's approval of it in terms of the striping, the turnaround, and all of the spaces. Other components, we'll show you on the landscape plan. We've done some modifications to the landscaping here to get more greenery. We've also added some trellis elements in the back to create a little more interest and scale in the rear of the building. So that's the primary site plan changes we made to the project. What I'd like to do now is go through the elevations and also some of the 3Ds that go along with those elevations. I'm just going to get up my own working set here to help me move it along. So starting with the main elevation that we talked about, which was the De La Vina Street elevation. That would be sheet A 3.2, 3.2, and also the 3D on 5.3. If so, right, I'll use the small set. What we've done is we've reduced the overall width of this main gable element, and there were some comments about that it felt a little forced trying to get attic windows and attic vents, so we've gone to a more traditional venting that allows the bracket to die into the centerpiece. I've also provided, and I'll show you later on sheet 9.2, I've actually developed large-scale details of the corbels, the brackets, the trim components, and the overhangs and trellises to show basically that we are taking your suggestions to make sure they have substance to them and enough detail to them to resonate with the style. We reduced the overall width of this gable by around 2 or 3 feet, and now that upper bedroom is set back and cantilevers out. We've also modified the design of the eyebrow window, which I have a detail to make it a little more traditional in terms of its shape and the way it tapers, and I have a detail on 9.2 that shows that. There was some comments about the double gable end on this far northern side of the project. We've modified this by narrowing it and make it a single gable element, and we've actually widened the porch to get more outdoor space. In addition, this gable steps back, so now looking on the second floor plan, the building continues to step back, and this gable element is even further reduced, which actually enlarges the one-story porch element a little more than it had been in the previous design. All the other components in the front yard comply with setbacks, and this is the view with and without the vegetation. We actually, this roof used to continue on beyond here. We actually cut that back, so we actually are trying to reduce the width of the high roof as it faces the street by almost 16 feet and let the more projection set back 10, 20, 25 feet from that. So it creates a reduced mass and much more of a residential house-like scale. If we turn to the north elevation, and that would be sheet 3 point, I think it's 3.1, but I'll double check. Yes, 3.1. We really try to simplify this, and here you can see the results of, instead of having the close to 30-foot spans, now by having 2 parking bays, the base elements here went from being 18 inches to 4 feet, maybe even 4 foot 2 inches. So it changes the whole proportion of these sort of gable elements, where before they seemed stretched down and elongated. We've also modified and created some changes in the roof height and some dormer elements or projections that hang out under the roof. And we've created some heavy corbelling that goes back, in this case, under the garage. In this case, it dives back into a heavier beam line that's back there. So we try to vary, not go with all the gable ends. Same thing on this end. This is a projection that comes out over the parking. We've significantly, I think, reduced the overall second floor footprint, and that shows on this elevation as well. We got rid of the stairwell that was on the perimeter of the building, moved it to the inside, and that allowed us to compress the footprint. And if you look on sheet, I'm trying to find the sheet that shows that comparison because it does relate to that elevation. I believe it's in the front here. If you go to sheet A 1.3, on sheet A 1.3, mine's in color, yours is probably in a tone. Everything in the magenta color areas where we actually pulled the second floor footprint back in to reduce some of the bulk and scale, particularly in this back corner. Also, this shows where we pulled that gable element back where it used to project out. And I believe we reduced it by like 680 square feet or approximately there, that much. I'd like to move on to the south elevation. That would be sheet 3.3. On the south elevation, we've also reduced the height of the overall roof by bringing it down. There was a comment that we had too much of the same width and redundant gable pop-outs. We've actually widened the two gabled pop-outs on 3.3 are now widened. We went from like 12 to 14 feet. And instead of starting to repeat this, we've gone to a different window treatment and we've gone to more of a shed dormer. And that dormer could either occur underneath the main roof line or we can, and that would mean lowering the plate, which I sort of like, or if you want a true shed dormer, we could keep the plate height up at the same and have it more of an eyebrow shed dormer. At the rear of that building, we used to have a double gable, and this was one of the highest roofs. We now lowered this to be a more simple, pure gable form, and I lowered the plate heights on this connector, so it actually ducks under this roof. So it really becomes the concept of being a composition here, a composition in the back, and sort of a little, for lack of a better term, like a neck or a transitional architectural feature to connect it to, as opposed to the repetition that we heard about. We've also gone to some combination single windows and triple windows and try to vary those up. And once again, in the front of the building, there was some concern that this should really look like a really architectural pleasing element when viewed from the street. As a result of narrowing the overall width of that gable, we created a little pop-out dormer, once again with the heavy timber corbelled, supports underneath it and the beam underneath it. Once again, we're looking at different textures of both siding, shingle without corner boards, and several different colors to not get too busy, but really give enough play and variation on the design. The last elevation would be on sheet 3.0, I believe, and that would be the west elevation, the rear elevation. This is our shortest elevation. For the most part, we kept pretty much no gables on this side, mainly because we didn't want to create shadow on that side as it creates the neighboring property. It's a couple of simple gable ends. We did take the advice of the board, and as you saw on that plan, we based on ABR comments, we were able to slide back that enclosed porch, but we did include skylights. So we do have pretty substantial skylights. I believe this skylit sunroom is 16 feet. I believe it's 16 by 18, and we have another skylit with the eyebrow window in the front sunroom that is, I believe that one is 10 by 28, so we tried to include those. We also did create a little trellis garden element to create a little bit of shade in the back, a little bit of structure, and soften that back corner of the building where we have some of our open space. Just looking at the floor plan quickly, I'd like to just show some of the changes we made. On the ground floor plan, we did take this stair, which used to occupy an outside position, which was what was pushing some of the building out, and we put it more interior. We've actually created a partial basement. We felt that in terms of the mechanical room, some of the dry food storage, and some of the other dry storage for the residents, it didn't make sense to push the building out when those components could be housed in the lower basement, seeing as they're more only accessed by staff and really don't affect the overall functioning of for the residents' purposes. This outdoor space could be a space we could store bicycles. It could be a closed bicycle storage room. We also have, carried a low wall across here. We could keep bikes also on the porch. So we have two places we can put bicycles for employees and for visitors. The partial basement plan. Here's the partial basement plan with the stair coming in. And once again, that's for mechanical equipment, dry food storage, and just general storage. We just felt that was the best way to compress the upper level footprint. That pretty much summarizes, the changes we've made. For the most part, we've tried to be responsive to your comments along streetscape, in terms of the scale and the look of the elevations of the building, in terms of the landscaping. We've tried to address the parking, which now we actually technically could have one space beyond what's required by code. We maintained all the existing hedges that were important to Carol as far as screening along the south property line. And for the most part, I think we dealt with, the parking adequately, both in terms of the on-site parking as well as our plan for valet parking in the event of special events. We have other photographs and exhibits, but I think, at this point, I don't know if, David, you want to do a little brief presentation of the changes to the landscape plan.
For the record, I'm David Black, landscape architect. I'm just going to limit my comments to some of the revisions to the site plan that Jay's already discussed, particularly in the south and in the southwest corner. This entry walk off of the sidewalk has been revised to accommodate this much more green space here, as you can indicate. Oh, sorry. As indicated there. And just so you have a better sense of it, this is a photograph of that hedge that Carol was concerned about preserving, which is essentially here. So the stone wall, which basically this planter, if you will, and the hedge is shared by both this project and the adjacent property. And that hedge just runs right down the middle of the property line. So Jay's, in his revisions, has been able to retain the existing wall and at most rebuild it per the existing condition here. So that's an important point. And then the rest of it is pretty much, we've basically accommodated the site plan issues and revisions that Jay's already enumerated. So I'm here for questions.
And you planted the joints.
Yes.
That was on the minutes. All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah, that concludes it. Just one thing I wanted to add was that, in the last hearing, some of the public was questioning what's the basis for some of our planning decision. I just wanted to reiterate more for the public's sake than this, board's, sake is that, we have over 18 years of experience and many of our decisions are based on one-on-one feedback with the operators. Myself, I'm a member of Aging Services of California and ASA, which is the national organization, so we're very involved in presenting to them, meeting with some of the top nonprofit operators, getting a lot of feedback on projects we've built. So I just want to emphasize to the public that it's not as much intuitive and speculative as much as it's based on a lot of positive feedback from caregivers and nonprofit providers. Julie is a main contributor in that, and as she has a working facility in progress, it gives us a lot of feedback. So as far as some of the issues raised, as far as open space, parking, the cycle of use and things like that, we'd like to think we bring a certain level of expertise and assurance, from the public's point of view, not this board's point of view.
Okay. Thanks, Jane. All right. I will open the meeting up to public comment. We have 2 speaker slips. We have a Bill Spencer followed by Peg Browning.
Good afternoon. My name, excuse me, a little nervous. My name is Bill Spencer, and I'd like to thank the architect, Jay, for addressing some of the concerns that we in the public have had. I still do have concerns, and that is on the north elevation and on the south elevation. One of the comments that the board made was that, and that I still have, has to do with the bulk of the building, the bulk and scale of the building with respect to those who view those sites. We still have a roof line, I think, that Carol had talked about, that's still not broken up, although, albeit, it sounds like it has been lowered. Am I correct in that, Jay? Yeah, but it's still not broken up to give a little bit better residential feeling to the ones who have to view those sides of the building. The other issue is the parking issue. And it is my understanding, I've only talked on the phone, is the case planner here? Here. Are we there? Fine. It's my understanding that under the conditional use permit, which is something that I think you have to look at with an arm's distance because you're really not in that portion of the business, is that, yes, the zoning ordinance does set some requirements with respect to parking, but the planning commission can either up that requirement or down that requirement. And I mention that for your purview because in many times when we're looking at buildings, we're looking to put a building in with a conditional use permit that's already there. And so we know how the building operates and how the neighborhood operates. And in this case, we have a building that's brand new. And should this, Jay, should this not work, I mean, we always have to look at the possibility of it not working. We're then left on the ground with a residential building that has 40 units in it and 19 parking spaces with no ability to get additional spaces at some time in the future when the project may fail. And I don't wish that on you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to think as a neighborhood person, that's something that I have to look at. So I just mentioned that for your purview. But my underlying scenario and my underlying statements are I still believe that the project is out of scale with the neighborhood and doesn't fit with respect to neighborhood compatibility. Jay, thanks for making those changes. I understand your position and you understand mine. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Peg Browning.
My name? Here's some notes. Let's see. Is that close enough, ma'am? You can hear? Okay. For the record, my name is Peg Browning. I'm a native of Santa Barbara, our wonderful city. I live on Delavina, 2 blocks from the project. 5 years ago, I suffered a brain aneurysm from a bicycle accident in town. Since then, I've moved downtown to be closer to my doctors because I do not drive and I wanted access to the proximity of downtown. I don't look like it, but I actually feel I am a very good representation of some people who would be living in this. I have suffered a brain injury. I get disoriented in traffic. I don't drive. I walk. And I really appreciate the beauty of this project, but I'm an actual person living there with some of these conditions. And there are no crosswalks on Delavina. Easy Lift doesn't like to pick up on Delavina. They don't feel safe. They make me walk to somewhere. Also, vehicles do not travel at a safe rate on Delavina. As recently as September, because I don't drive, a friend was giving me a ride. We got hit by a felony drunk driver. So I feel that the project is gorgeous. Architects, planting, all of that is, but I really believe that overall it's too massive for this particular area, and it's really not safe for people who are impaired. I'm a perfect example of that. I walk the streets every day. I ride my bicycle, and I really think it just needs to be rethought for that particular area. Thank you very much. I appreciate having the opportunity to say what it's actually like to live there versus looking at a building that looks nice on paper. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other public comment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, we'd like to recognize a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
All right, and I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Starting with anybody?
I'll ask one quick question because I've missed a few meetings. Is this the ADA access off the public sidewalk to come into here? Is that the...
Yeah, this is it's not even a ramp. It's like a 4.9% sidewalk to come into the project.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Other questions? Keith? Gary? No questions. All right, then we'll move on to comments. Keith, comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the applicants successfully addressed all the items that we had from the last minutes. I think the reduction in scale is welcome, and the breakup of the repetition on the north and south elevations in particular. So I think overall it's looking pretty successful. I just have a few minor architectural comments that, Jay, you might consider on the north elevation, treating the gable the same way that you did on the street elevation with a more kind of traditional venting look. This little, I guess it would be the...
Let's open up the plans to that page.
Southwest corner, that little projecting bedroom bay where you pulled the rest of the building back. Just maybe consider treating that similar to the way you've treated those other kind of shed dormer bays. I think that might work. And then the last thing, again, this is kind of more refinement, is on the west elevation where you have that sunroom, would just be to throw out the idea that perhaps architecturally that could be just treated different so that it has more of a porch appearance of kind of post and beam kind of thing that's been enclosed, and that I think would add a little more variety to that elevation. But
Yeah, I've had a few iterations where I brought the post all the way down and almost treated it like a porch.
yeah, something along those lines. So it's like a kind of a screened-in porch kind of look. But those are the only comments I have.
All right, Gary?
Yeah, I had similar comments about the porch, specifically about the skylights, and that I think the skylights are a bit out of place. And going towards Keith's direction, I think it would be a little bit better if you made that maybe a little bit more like a conservatory or something
Yeah,
like that.
I'm open to that because I've actually had a couple of sketches going back and forth with that.
I actually like the difference that you've done on the box out in the front, that you used a different materiality. That's kind of a breakup formation that I think it is a little bit more successful when you do that, to give it a little more authentication when you treat that. So I like that that this is different. I would like to see I still think that the roof lines in the center of the building are a little linear, and I was hoping that perhaps you would pop up one of the box-up windows or something like that. But I still feel like there's some linearity here on the south and the north elevation as well. That some type of breakup on that roof line would be nice.
Would you prefer, like, if these popped up like true dormers, so it broke the header height?
If one,
or
you just pop a vent dormer in it or something, but it's the length, it's the expanse of that roof that is throwing me off. But I do like what you did with the gable and turning. I mean, it's very successful. These are just minor things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Gary. Paul?
I'll just concur on Gary's observation about doing something along this area to break up the roof.
That's it? All right, Clay? Nothing, Chris?
I think the landscape plan looks good. I do have one question about the street tree. Looks like you're removing a couple of podocarpus. Is there an opportunity down in this lower bed to get one in there? I'm not sure what the situation is next door, but maybe just to study that, and if there's a possibility for a street tree there, it could be beneficial. I'm happy with that. That's all.
All right. I'm in the Keith camp that I think that the project's moved along even more successfully than I was happy with it before, even. So I appreciate the further reductions in the mass and the scale, and I agree with the other comments about the little refinements to the architecture and the porch and the little gable on the south elevation. So this project is still in the phase that we can't give it any. We can't move it forward onto preliminary approval. So I'm not exactly sure why we're given the compatibility analysis, Michelle.
The compatibility analysis is supposed to be in the motion when you forward it to planning.
Oh, it is. Okay. Okay. Does everybody know these? Just really basically, there are 6 items, and they are briefly: number 1, the project's design complies with all city regulations and is consistent with design guidelines. 2, it's compatible with the architectural character of the neighborhood and the city. 3, it has an appropriate size, mass, bulk, scale, and height. 4, it is sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. 5, public views of the oceans and mountains are preserved, if existing. Number 6, there's an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping. So I would entertain a motion for an indefinite continuance with some minor comments and with the, hopefully, compatibility findings.
Madam Chair, I'll
Keith?
stand with
Yeah.
that.
Go ahead.
So, as stated, this would be indefinite continuance back to full board. Moving on to Planning Commission, the board can make the compatibility findings for the project as previously read by the chair. The board appreciates the reduction in mass, bulk, and scale from the previous version and has the following architectural comments. Study treatment to the bay windows on the north and south elevations to add additional relief to the roof line. Consider revising the north elevation gable to be consistent with the other gable treatment in the project. And third and last comment would be study a different architectural expression of the conservatory on the second floor, the west elevation, to make it appear more porch-like, whatever that means. And that's it.
Was that on the east or the west? I think it was the back is the east.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. I know, yeah.
It's
I noticed you mentioned west, but it was
sort of
actually
the northeast.
the rear elevation.
Rear. That's how I view it.
Second.
Seconded by Clay. Under discussion? Does anybody want to add the comment about, did anybody else agree with Gary and I think Paul? Oh, you did about the gable on the south? The south elevation, adding the gable?
Well, just study treatment of the bay window.
Okay, so that was in there. All right, any other discussion?
Keith, do you want to mention the street tree possibility at all? Just to study whether or not it's necessary.
Study the feasibility of an additional street tree, Kathy? And further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain.
Abstained by Paul and Chris. Motion carries.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for your positive comments. We look forward to seeing you after Planning Commission.
If we're all still here then. All right, we're early. We would be on to item number 3. And I'm not sure. Yeah, they're here. Item 3 is 224 West Mitchell Trena. This is a new item with a public hearing. Okay, we can go ahead. And it's a new second-story addition to a single-family residence. But the reason it's here is because there are 2 single-family residences on the lot.
Don't have to wait.
No, we don't. She just said we're 10 minutes, so we're okay. So we're all right. There's that. So, okay. Your name for the record.
Well, I'm Alex Bouchot, and I'm the architect for this project. And it is a small addition on a property that has it has 2 residences, 2 one-story residences near the corner of Bath and De La Vina. Mitchell Torena and Bath, excuse me. So this is where La Bamba is. There's a series of houses. There's a 2-story house over here. These are the 2 properties, and there is a storage building in the back. Apparently, this property used to be one parcel, and it was divided long time ago. It's been owned by my clients for over 50 years. There are not a lot of records of the property, but I'll show you more or less what we have.
Do you want to do the photos first or not?
Okay.
Just
yeah.
so we can see what it looks like.
So yeah, that's the front. Well, let me show you on the plan, on the side plan. I have the drawings of the existing and proposed conditions. So everything is pretty clear. So this is the existing houses, and there is a hedge. There's quite a bit of vegetation in the front. This house, you get to peek the front of this house right here. There's another one back there. And yeah, this is the second house right here. You can see there's a pine tree. You can see that. And next door, there's a Victorian house over there. And let's see, which is shown right here. And these apartments are farther down. I think these are senior apartments.
We used to live there.
Oh, okay. So you know the neighborhood pretty well. Yeah, and this is La Bamba right here across the, kitty corner and so forth. And this is from the other side, because if you look at the aerial photograph, it's also through Bath. You can approach. There is a driveway that has a couple of residences over here, and so I took pictures. That's what that picture is right there. And getting closer is coming from here, taking pictures of the back, because we proposed to build something in this little corner right here. Okay, do you follow more or less? Is that pretty clear? And let's see what else I have here. Yeah, this is the house again. And this has some historical significance. So I talked to Jake Jacobus, and we had a discussion about this. And he said, well, if you keep the addition to the back, I will be satisfied. The rear part of the house has been altered significantly. It has not much of historic character, but these windows are considered character defining. So that's why I retreated from that, and I proposed the addition in the back. And you can see that in the existing elevations. So, maybe the drawing is a little bit generous in the sense that the condition of the house is not as pristine as it shows it here. It's in need of repair, but the front is very pretty. It has these windows are very nice. They have this on a V shape. They project out and so forth. So I wanted to stay away from that and move in the back. And this is the proposal here. It's the second story in this corner right here of the property. So I had a conversation. Then there's a question of a modification. I tried to avoid modifications like the plague, because and I thought I had, but at the end it turns out that I didn't, because the rule is this: the houses are already. Any second story, regardless of where it is, even though I'm keeping it 15 feet from the other one, still makes, this is considered a two-story building, and once I put a little something there, it becomes a two-story building and requires a modification. That's what the modification is about. Even though it does not really make the buildings any closer, the fact that I'm altering this building, that's what the modification is about. So the project consists of some remodel of the downstairs. It's very small. It's less than 400 square feet. I can get away with a circular staircase, which is, thanks to the new code, you can do that now, which is kind of nice. I've never done one of these spiral staircases before. It's kind of an interesting thing. And this little thing right there. And so this more or less shows the extent of it from one side. In the back, it's not really seen like that. You probably would see a lot less as it recedes. This is the side view in between the two houses. That's the side, and this is the rear. And I have a preliminary section here which shows the existing house and the addition on the side. And that's all I have.
All right. Thanks, Alex. So do we have any public comment, Michelle?
Yes, Madam Chair, would like to acknowledge a letter from Ms. Paula Westbury, a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
And nobody else in the audience here for this project? Seeing none? Oh,
Excuse me, I think I have one more letter just now. Yeah, we also have one letter from Ms. Linda Jones expressing some concerns, and that's retained in the file for the record.
okay. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Are you proposing any landscape changes?
Well, there is nowhere to add anything. If you look at the pictures, it's
pretty full, as is.
Really, there's nothing. We're not covering more. We cannot cover in the ground. We are leaving. It's pretty solidly landscaped. It's shown on the existing plan, and on here I listed more or less what's in there. In EX1, it shows the landscape. It's
All right. Any more questions? No more questions. All right, comments. Keith.
I think considering the location of the addition relative to the existing building mass and the relationship on the site plan, I guess overall I'm fine with it. I think it seems appropriate, and the modification seems kind of technical in nature and doesn't really seem to have an aesthetic impact. So I guess those are my comments.
All right, Gary.
I think it's very compatible, and it blends in with the existing architecture. I don't have any issues with it at all.
All right. Clay?
I'll just comment on the mod issue. I think I don't think there's any aesthetic impact with the request of the mod, so I think it's supportable. With the addition, I'm kind of struggling a little bit because it seems that we're changing. The addition has different window types. Some of the charm of the old building is not carried into the addition, and I'm just wondering. We're using different siding and we're using different windows, and for me, I'd like to see it a little bit more cohesive approach. That's basically it on my end.
Okay, Chris?
No additional comments, but I support Clay's comments as well.
All right, I had a question that I didn't think about till now, Alex. And is the mod because 20 feet is required for a second story between the...
Yeah, the one-story buildings require a 10-foot separation. Two-story buildings require 15 feet. And at the beginning, I approached the modification officer, Roxanne, about having an addition, more on top of the existing one. And she says, no, that you have to stay away from the 15 feet. And I was under the impression that, I was under the impression, well, okay, this. So if I stay away, I mean, it was maybe a miscommunication. I thought I was avoiding the whole modification.
Oh, but because you're adding to, even though your second story is 15 feet, it's still required because you're going to have less than 15.
It makes it a two-story building now.
That's not separated by 15 feet. I get it. And you're not over 50, you were doing 49% because of the parking.
Well, parking, yeah, it has no parking. And there's no way to put parking without really doing some major changes.
And do You know, I was looking at the window issue also that Clay was looking at, and I was looking at ways that you might be able to incorporate those breakups on the upper portion of the window, but it looks like there could be opportunities on some of these higher windows, but they are in the rear. But what are you proposing? Are you actually proposing different windows than what were existing, or is it just the fact that you're not proposing additional breakups in the windows?
Well, I'm proposing, I mean, they do, if you look at the existing, the way they did this, it's an interesting house. The way they worked it out was they put all the interest in the front, and then in the back they put this, some of these are, I think this one is original, and this one is also original. They are sliders, they are wood sliding windows. And I'm just copying those, right? And I'm copying the more elaborate one, just mainly because on an expense item, it would be very hard to reproduce this type of thing. But I think it's a valid comment, and I will look into ways to make some of the windows maybe more like that. I mean, I don't think I can really get into this type of thing, but perhaps something more like that.
Okay.
I want to have a window there, seems to be important. This one is, I may rework this window right here, this little one. The idea of adding breakups perhaps on the upper floor might be appropriate.
But all the other details are matching the existing, and the overhangs and the...
As you know, I sit on the Landmarks Commission, and usually sometimes we ask people to differentiate between the new and existing. I have no problem in going with some... This is single-wall construction, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So this house really hasn't been touched in 60, 70 years. I mean, 80 years since it was built. And it's just a single wall that on the downstairs, I was thinking of reproducing it with a similar material. I was thinking of changing to doing the second story, breaking it up with a belly band and the appropriate place, and switching to something else. I'm not fixed on that. I'm open to the board's suggestions. But I thought it would be kind of good to change that. Incidentally, it does have a little bit of on these
Shingle.
Two very small sides. It has just a few square feet of shingles. I tried using shingles up on the second floor. It didn't seem to work that well, but I'm not really fixed on that.
Okay. I don't have any further comments. So where are we? This is a comment-only project because of environmental compatibility analysis and the mod, so it would just be going on to the mod hearing officer to show. So does anybody want to make a motion to that effect? Anybody?
Madam Chair, definite continuance back to full board with the following comments. Study window proportions and detailing to be more consistent with the historic, I don't want to say historic, with the original windows at the front of the house. And then just study the materiality on the upper floor addition. Just look at whether it being consistent or not. I don't know how to word that. I think it'd be good to see a couple options and see if it's.
So just study the materiality.
Study the use of siding, vertical or horizontal siding.
To figure out kind of, I guess, where you want to go with that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, do we have a seconder?
A second.
Chris, under discussion? Just maybe, should we mention something in there about the modification and how the modification is technical in nature and has no aesthetic impacts?
Yeah, actually, Kathy, can you make this item 1 instead of item 3? Item 1 being the requested mod has no aesthetic impact on the project.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm
just
sorry.
the compatibility analysis, just make a, since it's going to the show, that's the purpose of the compatibility analysis.
Can we make compatibility findings as a part of going to the staff hearing officer?
My motion was to come back to the board. So if it doesn't fly and the board wants it to go to staff hearing officer first before coming here, then I couldn't make the findings for the historic resource portion.
I think we're actually sending it to
Are we
staff
sending it
hearing
to show?
officer right now.
making the
Am I
My
not
motion, my
understanding?
motion was back to the full board.
Oh, it was back to the full board. Okay.
So if
Okay.
the board feels it's ready to go to staff hearing officer, then we can
Okay.
deny the motion and have a substitute.
Okay. So his motion is to not include compatibility findings at this time. Okay, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor? Oh,
Can I ask then a 2-week continuance, right? So if we have to come back, so it doesn't take forever to get
Yeah.
on the agenda. Okay, so I come back then with those comments, right? The aesthetic comments on the siding and the windows, right? Okay, very good.
okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thanks, Alex.
Great, thank you.
We're way ahead of schedule. And we have a new item in 25 minutes, so we're going to take a short recess until 10 minutes till 5. Which is 130 North Calle Cesar Chavez. This is a proposal to permit as-built construction of 2,909 square feet of commercial buildings and consisting of a bunch of different additions to different buildings, and then a total of 52 parking spaces are proposed on site, which I don't understand that at all. Is that correct? Okay, we'll let Joe tell us what that means. Okay, your name for the record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turn on.
There you go.
My name is Joseph Matusha. I'm the architect for the project at 130 North Calle Cesar Chavez. Ken James, the owner, to my left, and Roy Hawthorne to my right, consultant. I think I'll let Roy speak first.
All right.
Thank you. This project is a culmination of at least 3 different enforcement actions spanning a period of 20 years. And Mr. James has been a tenant of the property with Southern Pacific for many, many years, and more recently became the owner about 10 years ago. And so he's been working diligently on cleaning up the property. It was, again, owned by Southern Pacific. He had a month-to-month lease in the past. And so the tenants that had been there historically have done a lot of different things. And so there was an enforcement action in 1986 that was spearheaded by Dan McLaughlin under my supervision, actually. I wasn't quite supervising Dan at that point. That was a year later. But in any case, Ken and the architect back then, Stan Riffle, thought they had taken care of most everything. But along came Andrew Stuffler and other staff in 2000. Some additional buildings were addressed at that point in time. And then more recently, in the last couple of years, Mr. James initiated his own complaint with one of his tenants, which brought about a re-review of the previous actions by the city, and some additional areas were identified yet. And by far this has been the most comprehensive review of the entire site and every building to date. And so every iota has been accounted for. and the bulk of these additions before you have been there no less than 20 years or more. Only, I think, one is more recent, which is more on the akin of a few hundred square feet, I think 400. That's all I really have to add. At this point, I'll kick it back to Joseph.
All right.
Okay, as Rory mentioned, the essence of the project started with a code violation of a unit right here, which James kind of initiated himself to try to help get the city to help him get a tenant out of there that was there illegal. And because of the code violation, the city kind of caught the whole property in one big group, I guess you'd call it that. And so we've come through. The project is an accumulation of as-builts, new as-builts that we're trying to save on the property, as-builts that the city has required us to do and to bring up to code, and a few trees moved and a few things. The first sheet here is basically what is legal. That's what's on the property. I have 2 site plans. That's what right now the city considers legal. That's why I call it a legal project site. Second sheet is basically what we're trying to do. Has a lot of information there. Has a lot of information because there is a lot of things in the works. Meaning the project description for the project has basically 22 items, and they're very detailed. We were asked to cross our T's and dot our I's and make sure we didn't miss anything, and so we have. And the code description is pretty thorough, showing what's there, what's not there, what has been, what's as-built, what is legal, what is not legal. There's 2 buildings that we're putting things into that we're asking as-builts that are in buildings that are legal. In other words, the building is legal. Things have been put into the building that we're going to ask for as-builts to retain the things. And it's a big, 22 items is a big thing for you
So
guys
let's
to
jump
look at.
right into it.
Okay. Basically, post-shade, things that are post-shade right here are things that are as-built. We're asking to be as-built. And there's about 6 of them, 6 buildings. This is interior. This is a total building here. This is a total building here. This is a total building. These are all interiors here.
Except that's a parking space.
That's a parking space, but it's a canopy over a parking space. This is inside of a building. This is a total building, a total building. This is inside of a building. This is parking in a canopy, and these are buildings that were docks. These were years ago, 30, before Ken even started renting it, leasing it from Southern Pacific. These were open docks, covered. And you can see where the cover's all the way out to the hash mark, covered, but they were open docks. And they have been enclosed by various tenants and Ken.
And this is interior?
That is interior.
Interior to existing building.
Yeah, that was interior covered docks, or covered open docks, but we have now, is now enclosed, and we're asking for it to, as-built, to remain enclosed. That's basically it.
Do you want to explain the project? We have to see it. I mean, we need to see what it looks like.
Let's go. I don't know how much. I'm sorry, I don't know how much you've looked at.
We want to see. We haven't looked at
Okay.
it at all.
Okay.
So we need to see
Let's just start with 1. We'll start with 1 and work our way up to 40.
Perfect.
Okay, 1.
Really quickly.
Okay, 1. Let's just kind of look at some pictures, and I put these in order. Okay. One is an existing building.
All interior stuff or exterior stuff?
Everything here, we're asking for an interior here, but the exterior is, there have been a lot of changes to the exterior.
Let's see this one more time.
Changes
So one was
meaning-
here, and it's
The building was here, it's a legal building, and
second floor.
we're asking that the second floor be legalized. It was too big because of the access to it.
But because it's interior.
It's interior and it's, oh, hold on, that's building department. But because these things were done, some of the things like windows and doors were added. This was a new window here. These were new windows, and they're noted on the plans here. This is a as-built. We're asking to retain this window. An as-built window. This was an existing window. As-built door. There used to be a sliding, and you'll see it right here. And the door is actually still there. And they just permanently secured the door. Put a door in it and a window in it, and there is a window up above in the second floor right here. So basically, and some of the things are still there. There's some lights some of the lights were added. In the project description, I've picked out everything that has to be addressed by the ABR board. And it's basically your view of this, of building number one, is just an exterior.
So the biggest thing on here was it was an existing two-story building with some fenestration alterations.
Right.
Okay.
And we're just adding windows to it.
All right, let's keep moving.
Okay. Let's go over there. And we'll go to... Let's jump down to building 10 and 11. They are existing. They are legal. What we're asking is to... there was a while back, permit was issued to demolish some buildings here, and air conditioning and heating was on the roof of that building, and now we're going to put it on a platform right here. We're putting it on a platform behind the building, behind 10. Let's look at
Right here.
right here. And I have included with the building some drawings for the existing what we're putting there. This
Where's
is the
the
unit.
floor plan for building 10?
Sorry,
Where's the floor plan for building 10?
right here.
Right.
10 and 11. There's two. We divided it into two buildings.
Okay.
10 and 11.
Okay, let's
And
see
the air conditioning unit is right behind it, and this is the air conditioning unit. It is not. It's just been set there.
You mean right there?
Yes, that's the unit right there.
Not the
It is.
kayaks.
It is not. It's not hooked up. It's just ducts. It's just sitting there. We would like to put it. We would like to place it there and leave it there, because that's where it was placed when the building was demolished. When it was on the roof.
And are you proposing a screen?
Yes.
All right, let's see it.
I have not. We discussed it. I told the owner that you would probably like to have a screen there. We have not. Not proposed. We have thought about it.
Okay, that's different.
It's different.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay. Then we'll move back to Building 17. Building 17 is a building 15 years ago, Stan Riddle, in the middle 90s, there was a spray booth there. Spray booth with a permanent wall, existing wall back here. Okay. Here's the existing wall in the back, right here, looking at that wall. It is permitted, just the screen wall. On the other side, which is on this side, it was a spray booth. It was taken out about 15 years ago, and a building put there, a Butler building, a very secure, strong steel building, steel-sided, steel roof, and that building is this building right here, right here. That, from there to there, is 17.
Is that this wall?
That's this wall right here, the south elevation, which is, there's the part of it right there, and that's the back of that wall. And obviously I don't have an elevation there because there is a legal. Building 16 is sitting right there, and building 18 almost butts right up against it here. And I do have seventeen. That's that. 16 is legal. Here's the south elevation right here, and north butts almost against it. That's north or east, and north is the elevation here, north elevation. And we're asking to leave that building. It's a very secure, very steel. It's steel columned. The whole thing is steel. It's a Butler building that was built there with substantial foundations, and it's got steel studded, and the steel exterior around it matches everything else except for the back wall, which was permitted. Everything else matches all the steel in the whole complex. All the steel in the complex is this sided. Next. Part of 18 was an open dock. Covered 18. That's just that part right there, and there's the dock. It was covered. This building here was an old building that we've discovered was moved from Mitchell Terrena with a permit and placed there when, Roy, maybe 25, 30 years ago? 78. So 32 years ago. So it is permitted, but what we added to it right there and then put under the dock, we're asking for as-built, and what we wrapped around the corner is under that existing building. Building 19 and 20, right here. 19, this is 19, this is unit 19 right here. 20 is here. The dock came out of here, and the overhang was beyond it, and we've added this building here. It is up the same height as this building. They're about 31, 32 inches off the slab. This whole I'll clarify something. Basically, the whole property is one big, solid, maybe 8-inch thick concrete slab. Slabs on top of slabs on top of slabs.
Can we see elevations in this, Joe?
Yes.
And photos.
And photos, right. Okay. Here is right here looking in would be the west elevation. Yeah. And then we're looking at, I did an elevation here, and then I did an elevation here to include all this in this one. And this wall right here is looking at that wall. That's the south elevation. And this elevation this one here is this elevation. And I have drawn them. Here they are. Here's that. What you're looking at in the picture is right here, right there, right here. And then you're looking at this one, which is an extension of 17 here. I brought in 17 and went up inside of that building to include this wall here. And this elevation is right here, which includes all the way over. This one includes that dock that's right there. That we're proposing two permanent parking spaces right there. And it includes that whole wall that's in between. No, sorry. Floor plan of. No. I'm really good at looking at this backwards.
So this one right here. No, oh, that's the elevation.
Oh yeah, here. I did an elevation right through here. This is a walkway that goes back into a bathroom right here. So that elevation is this, 15 and 18. 15 and 18 are right here. That's there's that bathroom. There's just a section through the bathroom. Here's 18 and 15. And forgive me, it took me about 5 years to figure out where the buildings are and where they're not. I drive to the property. I couldn't remember what building was where, and I don't expect you to
All
either.
right. Well, let's just keep going.
Okay. That's 18, 15, and 18. 19 was the original. This was kind of fired this whole, this was the code violation. It was remodeled by a tenant, and then about 3 years ago, without Ken James's knowledge, one of the people that rented the place moved into it, and Ken couldn't get him out, so he asked the city to help. Well, as soon as he asked the city to help, the city looked at it and says, oh, you have a code violation there, and the code violation was, so that initiated the whole thing.
Okay, let's just keep going with,
Okay.
we got a lot to get through, so.
19. We'll go from 19, we'll go to 22. 22 is a deli.
So just back up. 19 is all interior stuff? Doesn't
All interior.
Okay.
Right? No, I take that back. No, 19 is not all interior. That's why I'm including it here. It's got two windows and a door right there, and a door
Let's see
coming
it.
out of
Let's see
here.
the elevation.
Here's
I'll tell you what we're going to be looking for are what things look like from the outside,
Yeah.
not necessarily a history of everything or anything related to the inside. Let's just keep speeding it up with that in mind.
okay. All right. I understand.
No?
Here's a window that we've added that wasn't on the drawings that you have to consider. And this door and these two windows.
Okay. That's for 19?
Yeah, these two windows are 19. That goes off of 18, and here's the door. No, that was an existing door. So these are two. And here's the doors in the back. There's that one door and one window. That's off of 19, off of the back, in the canopy in the back. Okay. I'm going to go, and I'll try to stay with exterior. Granted, that's interior. We'll ignore that, at least for now. We've been asked, well, let's go back to 22 before we jump up to 22. 22 was a deli. Used to be a dirt out here, a road with no sidewalks. How many years ago? 20 years, 15, 20 years ago? They added sidewalks, came through here and added sidewalks. To do that, then Ken came through and improved the entrance to this, which used to be an office right there. It is now a 101 deli, and he added exterior trellis and decks to it. Trellis and decks. This is what it looks like now.
No, that's non-permitted, and that's what we're looking at today.
Correct. the deck, the trellis on it, and because of what the city is asking us to do, and this, you will consider this too, we were asked to make it handicapped. And out of many different designs, we came up with putting a ramp up here, ramping it just 6 inches down here and connecting the ramps and put a ramp up there. And so the deck now and the deli is now handicapped, which, next page. Which is right here. Here's the deli. Here's the existing as-built ramp, or decks and trellis, and here is the handicap that we're proposing.
You're proposing that, that's not in there.
Yes, it's not in there, not in the picture. That's one of the proposals that we're...
Okay. And you have an elevation of that proposed ramp from this
Yes,
angle?
yes. Right there.
Right there.
Here's the front. Yes, concrete. Here's the front. The the west elevation, and here's the south elevation with the ramp.
And the deck as proposed or as existing meets all zoning setbacks and blah, blah, blah?
Yes. The only thing, yes, it does. It meets everything because it's not high enough for the railings to be required. So it's only about 18 inches off the ground. 21 inches off the ground. And make sure then we'll go from there back. We're adding some parking. And you asked about let's hit the parking right real fast. The property had 51 parking spaces. We reconfigured it and came out with 52. We need 52. It is all calced out showing why we need 52. We got one extra because of what we added, what we're asking for. We eliminated, and this includes, this previous site plan includes everything that's legal. This includes what we are taking off. We wanted to eliminate these parking spaces, so we retained these and added parking places through where they were, where we could shoehorn them in. We actually changed a entry right here, and I've called these entry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 5 and 6. And entry 2, which was just no legal parking in it because we couldn't get out of it. Because we took out, in the demolition, we took out some buildings right here, we made it a one-way through. So it allowed us to put some parking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spaces in that area, which allowed us to eliminate some parking over here, which we're using for a storage yard over here. And I have pictures. First one's, there's the entries. I just took pictures of the entries. Here's the parking right here. That is here. All of them are, they now have some equipment parked in them, but they're all vacant. And these are the entries to the parking areas. Showing right here, pictures right here showing how the circulation forms right there. Over the years, landscape and parking have been looked at by this board several times. The city now is basically pulling apart sections of it, but we are using basically the same parking plan with some modifications and the same landscape plan with some modifications because we're not changing that much. But everything is documented on the drawings here that we're changing. Okay, let's go back to Building 28. Building 28, 29 will ignore the buildings, but we're looking at what the dock in front of it. There is an existing dock, little dock in the front of 28, and because this all has to be handicapped, which is, let's call them 28, 29, 19, and 18, and 20. We added a handicap parking place right here. There were existing 4 parking spaces right there. We took out one, added a handicapped, and then made the handicap scoring and the ramp. And now we have a handicap ramp that comes up right here, and ramps to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units through this area, this hallway right here, this right here. And it is legal, and it is big enough to allow.
Let's see what it looks like.
Yes. And that is right here. It's between 20, 19, and 18, and 28 and 29. This is this.
Yeah, we saw it in plan. So let's just look at it in elevation photos.
Okay. Right here. This is the west elevation. Looking straight at that building and showing the ramp coming up. The parking's in front of it. The ramp comes up, turns, and goes up here, and then goes along in front of building 28 and part of 29, and then goes back that hallway. And that hallway is...
You have a photo of it?
Yes.
If I might interject, this is a new ramp.
Oh, it's a new ramp,
ramp.
so it's not a photo. You don't have a photo of it.
No, I don't have a photo of the ramp. I have
Okay,
a photo of the...
then
I have
let's
the-
move on.
Okay. The two handicaps are new ramps. The one on the deli and this are new ramps.
Okay.
And that's it.
That's everything. Wow.
And it's a lot. Let's go back. Hold on. Let's look at the. Okay, trash enclosures. I'll hit a couple other things. We've added 3 trash enclosures. One.
We want you to hit everything, Joe. So.
Okay. Okay. Trash enclosure here. Trash enclosure here, and a trash enclosure here. This one is right next to, and I have a picture of it, and in fact the air conditioning right there. No, next to it, right there, yeah. There is a trash dumpster right there, and we're going to enclose it with a...
We need to see it. Show us a drawing of it.
Okay.
You don't
I
have
don't
it?
have it. Don't have it. Don't have it. Okay. The reason I didn't do it is because I have so much here that I wanted your input before I spent the time doing the trash enclosures. Same thing over here. There I have a picture of nothing there. Same thing here. No trash enclosure here.
Okay. Let's keep moving.
Okay.
What else?
Built up electrical. Okay, electrical. We have one place that the utilities are below the floodplain in the property, and is right here. And we are going to put a block enclosure around it.
And you have a elevation of that?
No. No.
An enclosure around the meter?
Around the meter.
Building 8 or 2?
We're building 2.
Keep going.
I put it there in plan, but I have not done an elevation of it. Okay. So I can't read these upside down. There's bicycle. We proposed 3 bicycle enclosures, bicycle locations where not enclosures, where bicycles can be located at. 1, 2, and in here, they're indicated with a with a note.
They're just spaces for bikes.
Just a note, and there's no enclosure, just a rack.
Okay.
1, 2, and 3.
And you have a
3.
photo of the rack. Or do you know what rack? You need a rack.
We need a rack. Need a rack. And access ramps.
I think I saw that on the building as we were going. Yeah, I think he did, but we'll ask him again. All these like fixtures. Yeah. We'll let him finish his thing and we'll ask him about these.
Okay, landscape. We are proposing, I'll read it. Approval of as-built, one tree removed under canopy number 21. Canopy 21 is right here. We got a permit to put that canopy there. It was new and there was a tree there, so we removed the tree.
So you got a permit to remove the canopy already?
That was 2 years ago. The tree got, because the canopy
The tree got
went-
what?
Got removed.
Okay.
And let's go to the landscape plan, probably the best thing to do. The three things that are circled right here. This is the original landscape plan from 2001 done by Arcadia Studios, Bob Cunningham.
Okay.
I got his permission to use it. The one thing we were changing is 1, 2, 3. We moved 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We moved a tree. We're going to move a tree from here over to here. We removed...
You're relocating it.
Relocate it, sorry. Relocate a tree from here to here. We're removing this tree. We're relocating a tree that's right here because we're putting a handicap ramp right there, and we're putting it right there. And we're relocating a tree that was right here, and we're putting it right there.
So you're only removing one tree?
One tree.
What kind of tree is it and how big is it?
What was it?
What was it?
What was it? I don't think it... I think it was there originally without... Let's see. It was... No, it was... right there. It was a tree that was already there before we put a landscape plan in.
I know, but what kind of tree is it and how big is it? You don't know?
Don't know because it's not there any longer.
Okay.
And it wasn't on the original plan either.
And it wasn't on the original plan. It wasn't on the original plan. It was, and the only reason I included it in this study is because it was on this plan. It was indicated that it was existing way before this landscape was done. So I just said, and when we put this, I was the architect for these canopies that were added back here. It was removed at that time. There was a tree there and it was removed at that time.
Okay. All right. Did you go through the whole list?
Yes.
All right. Do we have public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair. We have one letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
And is there anybody else in the audience to have any speaker slips? No. Questions from the board? Keith? No questions?
No questions.
No. Gary? No.
I have a comment.
Question. Go ahead, Clay.
Have you talked to transportation about your parking and worked out all your
Yes.
maneuvering?
Yes. They are in agreement with it. I talked to...
Question here. Is this a property line? It's a separate parcel here, right?
No.
It's not.
No,
So
it's one
this is-
parcel.
This is not a property
No,
line?
that's an electrical
electrical line.
electrical line that was...
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like a property line.
It's an electrical line that goes right to that meter right there.
Okay, cool.
More
That's it.
questions? No. Chris?
Just one. In front of the deli, you're adding the ramp. Is there a
Yes.
reason that that's at an angle like that?
Yes.
Just because of that, the apron?
No, it's at an angle because two reasons. One, the apron there, that the entry to the ramp, and two, we needed the angle to get the 1 in 12 because we
You had
got
to add length.
Oh, I see.
we had to add length, and with that angle, we got an extra 1.5 feet, which gave us the 1 in 12 to get the ramp.
Okay.
We had it straight, going straight up, and it wasn't enough ramp.
I had a couple of questions. Can you explain these photos and where they
Yes.
are?
Okay. These, I put the eight, these are the 8 things that are light fixtures on the property. They are indicated by these indications right here. And this one is, there's one here. Help me, Ken. I think there's one here and there's one here. These two. This one here is here, and here.
There.
1, 2, 3, and they are on permanent sensor.
Yeah.
They're on all the time at night,
Yeah.
or they go on only with.
Only dark, when it gets dark.
They're on
Okay,
full
where's this
time. Those are scattered around single circles. I think they're single circles. Yes, there's 18 of them. They're on sensors.
Okay.
And they're scattered around the place, and they only come on when people walk under them or movements underneath them. This one is located right here, and it's on a sensor. It is a recessed light and on a sensor. This is required for the handicap, which is right here. It's only one of those, and there's only one handicap lift, and it's right there. When the lift is used, it goes on. This one is right here, and it is a light that's on permanent. That's just the shape of it. It's an old one, but it's there. This one is, I've forgotten where that one is. That's a, that's above the circle. I think it's a circled one.
The jelly?
No, that's on the wall of number 1.
Yeah.
Right there. Right there.
Okay. And
These
that's under a canopy.
under the canopies. There's several of them along here.
Did you cover everything? And that's my last
Okay.
question.
Let me.
You already said you did, actually, so I'll scratch that
Yeah.
question.
No.
Okay, comments. Keith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Boy, hard just to get your arms all around this all in one sitting. I guess I'm most concerned about the deli, since that's right on the frontage and is most visible. All the building stuff that's internal to the property is pretty much invisible, so I really don't have too much of an issue with that. Obviously, I think you need to return with all the items that, like the AC unit screen, the trash enclosures, et cetera, the electrical enclosure, all the things that we haven't seen yet. As far as I'm concerned, they're all internal, and they can be real simple block structures and call it a day. I'd like to see a proposal for new exterior lighting fixtures that would be shielded, energy efficient fixtures that are more to today's standards. So, all that being said, I guess the deli, I don't know. On one hand, the existing trellises kind of adds something to it, and on the other hand, it doesn't seem to go with anything else on the property, so I'll let my colleagues weigh in on that. Those are all my comments.
Gary?
One of the issues I had Keith touched on was the lighting. Some of the concerns I have about the lighting would be, I think building 1 has some lightings to the rear of the building, and it looked to me like there were some floodlights pointing back, and I too would have some concerns with the lighting, that it be updated, downward pointing, and meet within our city guidelines for the lighting. Is there any proposed painting to be happening or anything like that? Is there site upgrades? I know that you're doing some walkways and so forth, but was any other upgrades going to happen?
Basically, the color of the whole property is one color. Let's call it beige. We'll call it beige for a matter. I put it on here color because for lack, I needed a color. I called it a Navajo white. It is a halfway Navajo white, but the whole property has been painted that
The
property.
question was, are you planning on doing any painting?
Yes.
Where?
Yes.
Well,
Where?
when you come back with as Keith mentioned about the trash enclosures, the enclosures on the electrical, the screening for the HVAC, come back with what you're planning on painting, what buildings you're planning on painting, if there's trims, how the finishes are going to be on the handicap, and the metal railings that you were going to do, what they're going to be. Okay. And there was some mesh on the metal railings on one of the, what is that mesh going to be? Those will be my concerns.
Even I'll pick out that one thing. There is a handicapped lift and railing, and we will probably match what is there, but I will show it.
Okay.
There's already a handicapped and railing, and most of the that's going to come right in here.
Any more questions, Gary?
Asphalt, is there going to be asphalt in any asphalt work? Going to be done asphalt or concrete patching or any?
Probably driveways, mostly concrete. Concrete. It'll match the concrete. It'll stay concrete. We will not put. There is no asphalt on the property. It's all concrete.
All right.
Two comments. One is that I think this probably can go back to consent calendar with whatever our motion is, because everything is fairly minor. And the other item was the tree to be replaced. Is there a place on the site that a tree could be beneficial to replace one that was lost, or because it's pretty much industrial that there's no place internally for a tree?
Well, one that was lost, I've already replanted. That was in the front,
Along the 101 Deli,
yeah.
You planted a tree over there?
I had a European sycamore, and one of them died. So they said.
No, he's talking about a tree about the tree that was taken out. Yes, we can find it. Yeah. There have been trees moved around because of different locations.
But I would only suggest planting one that would be beneficial to the long-term use of the property, not just to satisfy some kind of request.
Right.
Okay.
Clay.
Madam Chair. I know this property pretty well. It's quite.
You do now.
I did before too.
I know.
It's quite a unique hodgepodge of buildings and odd storage things. My general feeling on this project is that most of the things that the applicant is requesting are, like he said, internal and non-visible. I think the areas that, for me, that I'm concerned about are in front of the deli and these areas to the south, I guess, right? And I'll comment on the trellis at the 101 Deli. I'd probably eaten there a couple hundred times in the past. The trellis is kind of an oddity, but it's actually a nice feature to have on that building. So I don't think taking it down is the solution. But I am concerned about this ramp because the way that deck is functioning, coming up from that side, the way the door opens, and there's going to be a kind of a jam over there, and you're losing part of the deck. So I can see that there's no real. I've been kind of looking at this, trying to see if there's any other solutions, but they're other than a switchback, which would still end up in the same place. There's really not much opportunity to fix that. I think for me, I'd like to see some sort of either a street elevation or something along Calle Cesar Chavez that is at the public realm, that we can understand the relationship to the large Butler building here that is sort of flanking Bedrock and the 101 Deli, and the 101 Deli and the entry gates and the couple buildings here, and the building on the next one's over. There's a lot of gates, and now there's ramps, and I think some sort of, I don't want to say an artistic rendering, but something that lets us kind of understand what we're looking at publicly. I think the interior, I mean, where do you even begin to clean it up?
Can I ask a question?
Not yet. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
So for me, it's sort of in that realm. It's just to really understand what's facing the public. Inside of that, I think that the board should reserve some right to help clean it up a little bit. The other things, I think the lighting is a really good idea. I'd be nervous if there's a lot of lights on that are left on continuously. It seems like this property is fairly secure now with all the gates, and I know there's back gate for Bedrock. So, but I think definitely some lighting upgrades and some addressing the public realm.
Okay.
Can you clarify? A question I had is I wasn't sure. Could you clarify what you said? Something about an elevation or something to the west.
Well, you've
west
got
elevation.
a
composite.
You've got a 20
photo would help.
Yeah, even if it was a photograph taken across the street, like 5 foot high, like 20 of them
Panorama,
that you
yeah.
stitch together, but something to kind of understand
Now I got it.
Okay.
that streetscape. You don't have to get out there and draw it and render it, but something that helps us get the whole picture.
Is that it, Clay?
Yeah.
Chris?
Okay. I have similar concerns about the deli area. I think that ramp is bothering me somehow. I don't think it's going to be an improvement, although it is required. So I would look for ways to maybe rethink that, if at all possible. The only other thing was that one tree that was apparently existing. I think that was not existing. There's where is it? The eucalyptus, 6 24-inch boxes. Let me show you on the landscape plan up here. If we can go to the existing plan. Back to. This is the one you're talking about that died? Okay. So that is on this. I believe that's one of these 6 24-inch box eucalyptus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So those are different. So what I'm
6. Okay.
What I'm getting at is basically what Paul said. I think if you can find another place to sort of substitute that tree, that would bring you back up to what was approved previously. But that's it for comments.
Put one right next to the marble.
If you no, I'm sorry, we can't do a dialogue with the audience, but you guys can talk about it later. I pretty much agree with what everybody else said. I think that it's a good thing for you guys that a lot of the things that you're doing are internal to the site and you can't see from anywhere. So I'm going to, agree with just taking care of mainly the things that you can see. But if any one of these components had come to us without 40 things and it was one, we would ask for some general cleaning up of the site, I think, and that's what you're hearing from everybody else. And nobody mentioned this, but we were talking about a enclosure for the AC unit, but there's all this ducting that's also attached to it that we would never allow another applicant to not to do this kind of a Brazilian type.
But it could be allowed. We could allow it if we screen this in.
Brazil in like the movie Brazil.
No. But if we screen this in.
Exactly. So, those kind of things we're going to be asking for. And then, I'm looking at things like, I don't know if this was an as-built condition. I think it looks like somebody just saw cut that and put that unit in at some point, and then it wasn't patched. So things like that, I think that...
Go ahead.
When...
It's a
private joke.
Yeah.
So things like that, and the comment about the lighting was really good, I thought. So I think in general, it's I don't think anything that you're doing here is inappropriate, other than try to find a way to make the property look better, and then have a little bit more control over your tenants in the future, and try to so that doesn't happen again. So I think I'm hearing a bunch of little things. Does anybody have a consolidated list that they want to throw out as a motion? And this would be a continuance back to the, well, it would, if it could go on consent, I'll let the maker of the motion decide that, but we can't, it's comments only at this time because it needs environmental assessment and development plan approval. So,
Madam Chair?
yeah.
Let me just make the comment to the board because it does require the development plan approval and those are findings. We would prefer those findings to be made by the full board.
Okay. So this would be a indefinite or a 2-week continuance back to full board
2 weeks.
for whoever would want to make that motion. Anybody? Okay.
So this 2-week continuance back to full board with the following comments. Provide drawings of all proposed additive elements such as trash enclosures, HVAC screens, and electrical enclosure. Provide proposed color and materials for the new painting and ramp elements. Show the replacement of the tree that was removed. Provide a streetscape view, either elevation or photographic, whatever your preference, of the street frontage along Calle Cesar Chavez. Study the new accessible ramp at the deli and its interface with the existing deck. Several board members commented that they felt that there might be a more appropriate solution there. That's it.
Do I have a seconder at the motion? Clay? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And provide a proposed lighting plan with cut sheets of proposed fixtures.
Okay, we have a maker and a second by Clay. Under discussion?
With the maker of the motion to include cut sheets of Grex as proposed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion?
Under discussion, I've just been milling over this ramp, so let me see if I can offer an alternative.
We'll pull back to that. Here's the.
Since you used it a couple hundred times.
I think a couple hundred is an understatement.
Believe me, I've tried every which way to shove 1 in 12 in there.
Well, my idea is a little bit different, and what I'm considering is you have a window here, and you could potentially take the window out, come up the side, and come in the building, and that would reduce some of the square footage inside the building, or it would reduce some of the seating, which there isn't much last time I was there, but it might protect some of the exterior deck and this, whatever that is. That
There's a ficus there.
Thanks.
The ficus remains. It's sitting. Ficus sitting right there. Yeah.
He's putting the ramp right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that'll end up getting trimmed, and
The ficus here in the ramp comes up around it.
but it's just an alternative thought of trying to get in the building. I think what you're going to end up with is a door here, and you're going to have a collision of access trying to get around that door and in.
There's a lot of room there, and I mean, if you're going to try and get in a door with a, I'm not debating it. I just said if you're going to try to get in there with a person in a wheelchair, there's going to be a collision anyway, and it always is any door. And that's what we got right there.
Is your occupancy over 49?
No.
So you could swing the door in?
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the items on the...
Yeah, study that.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe they could...
Madam Chair, I had one other comment, and this is for staff. If you can update the project description to include the demoed buildings.
Project
The project description there, if you add...
It's just a note to staff.
versus what the total is, and she understands what I'm talking about.
Okay, no, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our meeting for July 12th. Have a nice night, everyone.
Sorry, I got